Folks, Capcom has released a very interesting new feature on their Buckler website, which is kind of like their online hub website. It's what they call battle diagrams, but those of us in the FGC will know this as a matchup chart. So they have released a matchup chart based on data gathered from ranked matches in Street Fighter 6. So I thought it would be interesting to take a look at this, try to analyze what it means for the game, what it means for balance, and, you know, what is the use of this kind of data? Can we use this in place of a tier list or in place of a real matchup chart with sort of things gathered from top players? Let's talk about it. So some of the first things that you'll notice here, you can separate the control types. And something I immediately noticed, kind of as you would expect, at the lower ranks here, Modern dominates. You can see here in Rookie, most characters, their Modern version outperforms their Classic version. Same in Iron, you can see all these characters up here are doing really well with the Modern version. But as you get further up in the ranks, the Moderns start to kind of fall off. You can see even at Gold, there are still some characters that are overperforming in Modern than Classic. But, you know, as we get up here, Classic really starts to dominate. And then at Master rank, only Chun-Li is doing better with Modern than she is in Classic. So only Chun-Li is the superior Modern version, at least according to this data. But I think it's a little bit more interesting when we combine them and just look at the characters overall. So at the lower ranks here, we can really see that the big bodies are dominating. I think this makes sense. Like, I think when you ask new players, you know, who are the most frustrating characters to fight, I think characters like Zangief tend to be pretty high up there. Zangief is far and away the strongest character in Rookie. Like, it's not even close. But Marisa, Honda, also way up there as well. And as we go up, Gief continues to be good. When we get to Bronze, Blanca, Honda, Marisa, really good. Blanca, Honda. Honda, number one at Gold and Platinum and Diamond. So Honda's doing amazing at a lot of these ranks. And then at Master, Honda's still number 5. But Dalsim, the number 1 best character in Master. I think if you ask most people these days who's the strongest character, most of them would say JP. He's doing really well at number 2, but Dalsim at number 1. What does it mean? But so far, I've just kind of been talking about a character's position, but because this is a matchup chart, it's way more interesting than that. We can see how each character does against each other character. So, you know, Dalsim does very well against JP, which is pretty interesting. You know, this is one of the most meta characters in the game. One of the most defining characters right now is JP. So having a character that really does well against JP, I think is a really valuable asset. Shockingly, Dalsim does terribly against Honda. I feel like in most games, this is a good matchup for Dalsim, but yeah, Honda's pretty hard to stop with Dalsim. It might overall at the highest level be a good matchup for Dalsim at like tournament level. But yeah, in online, you have to be really good to be able to stop Honda's shenanigans. So this was a surprising result to me, but still pretty interesting. But let's look at some other surprising results on this. You can see not only is Honda really high, Lily is really high as well. A character that many people consider to be perhaps bottom 5 in the game. Well, she's top 6 on here just in terms of overall performance. Aki as well. A lot of people say Aki is not that good, but she's doing pretty good. She made it into the top 10. So there's some surprising results here. And if we go all the way down to the bottom, yeah, Ryu, Zangief, Jamie, people tend to say these characters aren't that good. But Ken, many consider Ken to be one of the best in the game, and he is the 4th lowest on this matchup chart. Also, Juri and Cammy, ridiculously good characters who are very low here. So what's causing this? Why are the characters that, you know, the top players look at the game and they say, okay, clearly, you know, JP is strong, but, you know, Ken, Juri, Cammy, these characters are all really strong. Why are they not doing that well on their average of matchups online? So I think there's a few factors here. One of the most important factors, I think, is actually play rate. So Capcom has also released this statistic, which is how often is the character played at each particular rank. See, at Master, the characters that you would expect are pretty high up there. You know, Ken, Luke, Ryu. You know, people say Ryu isn't that good in this version, but he's still like a really popular character. Cammy, obviously, DJ, Juri. So other than Ryu, I think most people would consider these top 6 characters to be some of the best characters in the game. So they're really high up here on the usage charts. And what I actually did here is I have plotted here in Google Sheets. I've plotted usage with average win rate. So you can see here, the x-axis is usage. So the further they are to the right, the more popular the character is. And then the y-axis is, you know, their aggregate win rate. So you can see Dalsim, not only the least popular character, but the winningest character. So the least picked character has the best win rate. And you can kind of see there's a trend in general that as we get further to the right, the win rate gets worse and worse. The more people pick up your character, the lower the average gets. So I think this is for sure a trend that is visible in these rankings, right? We saw that Ken, one of the most popular characters, had a surprisingly low win rate. Ryu as well, one of the most popular characters, very low win rate. Dalsim, highest win rate, least picked character, and we can kind of see that trend follows. So what's the mechanism for this though? Why are the characters that many people are playing doing worse and the characters that fewer people are playing are doing better? So I have a few theories. I think the first one is just the more you fight a character, the better you get at fighting them, right? It makes a lot of sense. You never fight Dalsim because nobody plays him. So it's going to be really hard to beat him. You're not going to know his tricks. Whereas, you know, everyone and their mother plays Ryu and Ken. So you're going to have an easier time beating these guys. There are, of course, exceptions. We can see that Luke and JP are major outliers. These guys are quite popular and they also have an extremely high win rate. So maybe we can use the outliers as like a symbol of maybe this is somewhere the developers should look to change balance. Same with the negative outliers, right? We've got Manon, Zangief, and Ryu. I feel like these characters are kind of lower win rate than you would expect for their play rate. So yeah, maybe I'm not saying that that's for sure like the characters that they should balance are the characters with the highest, you know, variation from the mean here, but I think it's a sign, right? But another mechanism besides just people getting good at matchups that they fight more often, I also think it has something to do with kind of people who are sticking with their favorite character versus people who are kind of just, you know, picking the meta character or the popular character. I think your average Joe who just goes, okay, you know what? I want to get to master. I don't really care how I do it. I'm going to pick Ken, you know, they're probably going to have a lower win rate than someone who is like, okay, Dalsim is my favorite. Dalsim is the guy who I'm dedicated to. I'm only going to play Dalsim. I'm going to master the character. We know that there are a lot of people like that, like, you know, Mystic Crimson and Broski and stuff. Those guys are real specialists with these characters. Broski also an Aki specialist. So I feel like these specialist type players at master rank probably will have a higher win rate than the million average Joes who are like, whatever, I'm just going to pick Ken because I know he's good. And when we go back to this play rate chart here, I feel like this also correlates pretty well to ease of use. Like, I think the easier characters tend to be higher here. Like, the first kind of difficult character to play on here is like Jamie, maybe. Even Jamie, you know, he's somewhat difficult, but he's not uber complicated. Same with JP. Like, JP's got some complication, but not like crazy. I feel like Chun-Li is probably the hardest character to have a pretty good pick rate here. Whereas all these guys, Ken, Luke, Ryu, Cammy, these are like legitimately some of the most straightforward and easy to pick up characters in the game. So I feel like it makes sense why they're so popular. But it's kind of the opposite on this win rate chart here. It feels like the harder characters are kind of higher here. So, you know, again, since it's a reverse correlation with their pick rate, I guess that makes sense. But also I feel like maybe the difficult characters are just more difficult to fight against. Like if a character is really complex, you know, they're not going to have straightforward answers. You're going to need to spend more time in the lab to figure out how to beat them. So maybe that could be another potential mechanism for why the lesser used characters tend to be performing better. Okay, so we've looked at some of the surprising factors of this chart, but let's talk about kind of the big question here, which is, should we just use this instead of a tier list, right? You know, everyone makes their own tier list and they go, okay, I think JP is top tier. I think Ken, Luke are top tier. I think Aki and Lily are bottom tier, whatever. People make their own tier list, but this is actually what's happening in ranked, right? This is what's actually happening in rank is Dalsim players are doing the best. Lily players are doing significantly better than Ken players. You know, this is really what's happening in ranked. So really, shouldn't this just be the tier list? So obviously, you guys probably see the direction I'm going with this is I'm probably going to say no, right? I don't think that this makes for like a better tier list. So the first reason is obviously what we've seen, that play rate is a negative correlation with win rate here, and that doesn't really work for a tier list, right? So like, for example, if Dalsim got a really cool new costume tomorrow, his win rate would actually probably drop because more people would play the character. He would get more players, and that would drop him down the tier list. So that doesn't really make sense, right? If something like a costume can affect the tier list, or just like if something like a character becoming more popular for whatever reason, if that can affect their tier list placement, I don't really think that that's that valuable. So that's one reason, is that the win rate is almost more determined by play rate than it is the actual strength of a character. Reason number two for why I don't think that this really works as a tier list is because this doesn't match what we've seen in tournament results. So I think the best indicator for the strength of a character is kind of their average placement in tournaments, because that's the highest level of play, right? Obviously, JP and Luke are doing amazing at the highest level of play, but other than that, this really doesn't match up, right? We're not seeing Honda do very well in tournament. We're definitely not seeing Lily. So this data, I found this on Reddit. I'll link the thread down in the description, but the red line is how many times this character has made top 8 in a CPT Premier event. The blue line is how many of them have qualified for Capcom Cup. I believe this data is a few months old, so the final numbers are probably different. But yeah, as we can see, Ken doing really amazing here, despite having a pretty low win rate in ranked, at least at master rank. Characters like Aki, Lily, these guys have horrible placements in terms of tournament results, but in ranked win rate, they're doing quite well. Again, there are going to be exceptions, right? Like Luke and DJ are doing really well in terms of win rate and on here. So there are some characters that are doing well in tournaments and in ranked, but for the most part, again, there's a bit of like a negative correlation of the characters who are doing amazingly and in tournaments are not doing as amazing in ranked, just because I think they're more popular, right? The more people are playing a character, the more likely they are to win a tournament, right? Because there's just more chances for them to do it. There's just more opportunities. Okay, so all that being said, I really enjoyed taking a look at this data. I would recommend you guys take a look too. It's just pretty fun to look at, but don't take it too seriously. Don't start getting in online and on Twitter and in my comments and stuff being like, bro, how can you say that Lily is bad when she's so high up on the ranked win rate? All right, I don't want this to start a ton of arguments, but I do think that it is some interesting data to take a look at. So let me know what you guys think. Am I underrating the importance of these ranked results, or am I taking them appropriately as a grain of salt here? Which do you think is more important? How well people are doing online with the character versus how well they're doing in tournament? I'm curious what you guys have to say. Let me know. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.